I don't think as a coach you can let that decision be in your athlete's hand. Okay. I wanted to take a little bit of time to sleep on what I'm about to say and kind of reflect. Because when I went off a little bit on a tangent, I wouldn't say I was malicious in it, but I want to dance delicately on this topic because the running world is a small one. I interact with one of these people from time to time. I put out a video on Instagram, on Instagram TV, on Tuesday afternoon when everything came out. So on Tuesday morning, Sarah Crouch came out with an Instagram post talking about how she ran Boston Marathon on a stress reaction in her femur. The stress reaction then turned into a stress fracture, as these things do. And I really questioned that decision. And I think the reason I wanted to wait, because I think first off, I was a little bit too harsh on Sarah. I want to say that I want to apologize for that first. I want to apologize for coming out a little bit too harshly against Sarah. I think she saw some of the things I was saying. It was a little bit, I don't know, she liked people replying to me. So maybe she wasn't appreciating the criticism I was giving her. However, my opinion on the matter has not changed. I still do not believe that this was the right decision. I don't think it's Sarah's fault whatsoever. And let's get into this. Let's talk about this. Like, she's an amazing talent. But she's being coached by Steve Magness, who is someone who I look up to a lot, someone who I've learned from a lot. I've both the Steve's books back here on the bookshelf. His Science of Running book is probably the first book that really crystallized a lot of training theory for me. I'd read a lot before that, but the way that he put it in like a more, I don't know, scientific method, but like more analysis based, as opposed to just like topics in general. I really like that. Really clicked with me. That really helped me understand, why we do strides, why we do other things, and the role that muscle tension and stimuli have to do with the training theory. And that really helped me, crystallize my understanding, my knowledge base that I already had. So I really respect Steve Magness and what he's been able to do in the sport and how good of a coach he is. But this is a big misstep. So Sarah Crouch. So let's talk about this. Let's get this out of the way. The Olympic standard. I've written a couple articles about it. This whole thing is kind of compounded by the fact that USATF has not come out and put their approach in concrete. So USATF has not said that the top 3 of the trials automatically guarantees you a spot in Tokyo. Because of the new standards and the way everything's worded, for the most part, we are to believe that you must have the Olympic A qualifier. And then if none of the top 3, the way I understand it is that if none of the top 3 in Atlanta have the Olympic qualifier, or if one of the top 3 or what have you doesn't have the Olympic A qualifier, they're just going to take the top Americans from the rankings, if that makes sense. I'm going to put out another video on this as we get into it. I was kind of waiting for USATF to clarify their statements, but they haven't done that, so I don't think it's going to happen. We're just going to have to play the waiting game on that. Okay, so what this means is that if you finish top 10 in a major marathon, that automatically gets you the Olympic A standard with how IAAF's rankings are working. So that's Boston, New York, Chicago, Berlin, London, the World Marathon Majors. If you get top 10, that's an automatic qualifier. So that's why Sarah was in the race. She was going after that top 10 because she is a Olympic hopeful. She's definitely in that mix. I think it's still, an outside shot, but she's still in the mix nonetheless. So she needs that A qualifier so that she can get to Atlanta, not have to worry about a fall marathon as much. However, she's definitely run better at Chicago than she's ran at Boston. But I understand the thought process behind this. You've had the best training of your life. You, 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 But this is a big misstep. we as athletes are sometimes clouded by our motivations. So while Sarah's decision to run Boston wasn't necessarily a good one, I can understand where she's coming from. But you have to have her wait till fall, right? If you're coming into Boston and you're banged up, not just banged up, like banged up is a muscle injury. Banged up is something that you can run through with discomfort, but that you're not going to be completely derailed afterwards. She had a stress reaction in her femur. If you run on that, it's not going to take long for that to turn into a stress fracture. We're talking like within one run. And obviously, I'm going to put her splits up on the screen in a second. And a stress fracture in your femur is going to take 10 to 12 weeks to recover from. Now you're impacting fall training. With the Boston field, a top 10 finish was always going to be just asking a lot to come her way in the beginning. But even then, because her PR wouldn't have put her in the top 10. She would have had to PR by 2 minutes, and she would have had to outkick Betsy Sena. So let's look at Betsy Sena's. By 20K, Sarah had fallen off. So, if you look at her splits, by 20K, she was 3 minutes back from that second pack, so that Betsy Sena group. She was never going to catch up at that point, because the splits were going way in the opposite direction. How do you not have a plan for her to drop out? How do you say, okay, Sarah, we'll let you race. However, if at any moment you feel like you're losing contact and you can't get it back, and I know the marathon's a long race, so I'm not even saying losing contact, but 3 minutes is not losing contact. That's out of it. That is out of it. You have to have a scenario where she drops off, where she steps off the track, or somebody has to be there to tell her to step off. All she's doing by running 7:12 pace at the end of this run is putting her fall marathon in jeopardy. The longer she runs on it, the longer it's going to take to recover, and the less time she's going to have in the fall, the less time she's going to have for training. It's just stupid. I don't know how you as a coach, so if I'm Steve Magness, first off, she's not racing. If I'm Steve Magness, I'm not having a race in general. I'm saying, okay, live to fight another day. Maybe we find a marathon. Yeah, with the World Marathon Majors, it would have to be the fall. But we can go to Chicago. We did it last year. She was the top American at Chicago last year. It's just, she would have had to been on her A game, fresh, not banged up at all, run a PR by 2 minutes on a course that is substantially more difficult than Chicago. I just don't get it, man. If the goal is top 10 or bust, right? Top 10 or bust. So at 20K, it's bust. It's bust. So she has to drop it. And I get it. Like, we're supposed to applaud gutsy performances. Like, us as athletes, as coaches, we're supposed to be like, yes, that person right there, that is great. That is determination. That is motivation. We're supposed to applaud that. But sometimes gutsy and stupid are very close on the spectrum. They're not as far off as we would like to think. And while I applaud Sarah's willpower, her running on a stress fracture for the last over half of this marathon, it's, pretty impressive. But it's stupid. It's very stupid. Painful. But it kind of makes me lose a little bit of respect for Steve, for Magness. Not for Sarah. I get it. Like, as a runner, I understand the mindset that Sarah's in. But that's what a coach is for. My whole argument is, as a coach, it's your job to be an athlete's leash, to tell an athlete when they don't have their own best interest in mind. Because as athletes, we want to run fast, we want to run well, and when training is going well, we want to get out there. But if you're paying me to coach you, and it's in my best interest to get you to the line healthy, and if I'm overseeing your Olympic qualifying period, your Olympic qualifying time period, there's no way I'm letting you race that race, because I know that if we go in with the stress reaction, it's going to turn into a stress fracture unless some miracle happens. And we're talking 10 to 12 weeks out, and by that point, it's eating into your fall marathon preparation. It's eating into Chicago preparation. Obviously, neither of them owe me anything. I get that. Like, who the hell am I? But I want this to be a teachable moment for us as coaches. So if you're watching this channel, know that there are things that you can run through and there are things that you cannot. I kind of came into this thing without saying what my credentials were. So obviously I'm nowhere near what Steve has, but I've coached at the collegiate level. I USATL qualified, even though that doesn't really mean much. I've coached athletes of various different levels. Obviously I've never coached anyone of the caliber Steve has, but there needs to be that open communication. I think somewhere the communication broke down, and I'll get to that in a second because I DM'd Steve, and while he doesn't owe me anything, he was gracious enough to get back to me. So let's read that real quick. Let me get into that. So I DM'd him. I said, "Hey Steve, I wanted to reach out to you and talk about what Sarah Crouch discussed regarding her decision to run Boston. I was wondering how much input you had into her decision to run on her stress reaction. I understand if you don't want to comment on it, but I learned a lot from your book when I was trying to establish my coaching methodology, and I wanted to get your side of the story before I put everything together. I just know that you've coached her in past build-ups, but did not know how involved you were in this decision." He responded pretty quickly, actually, and I think that's because multiple people were messaging him, which, that's fun. Said, "Hey Justin, sure, no problem. I'm a firm believer in the athletes writing their own career. I'm here as a guide and to nudge her in the right direction. She didn't find out until late in the build-up and told me 2 days before, so that's a problem. We had a discussion on it, and while I asked her what the best and worst case scenario, we then talked about it, if she would be okay taking potentially 10 weeks off and settling herself back. She said she would. If she could accept the downside, then it was her choice to take the risk. But what makes Sarah good is her optimism and her willingness to take risk. It also can get her into trouble. My job is to lay that out clearly to her and make sure she is aware of the reality of her situation. And once she decided to take the risk, I'm in the corner of supporting her the whole way. The first thing she texted me was that she had no regrets, and I believe that. Even if it wasn't the most logical decision, she's got to do her career the way that she wants it, and I firmly support her in that." So this is where I disagree. I don't think as a coach you can let that decision be in your athlete's hands. First off, that tells me there isn't a lot of communication going back and forth. That tells me that Steve lays out the training, that I keep calling it Steve. That tells me that Magness lays out the training, and that there isn't as much of a back and forth as what I would like if I was a coach. It's a very much an input-based thing. You need to know on almost a daily basis how the workouts are going, this is the problem with remote coaching. You can't just let this go and not follow up on it. So the fact that Sarah admitted that the week before she had known, or the past few weeks, that she was in pain, she didn't tell Magness about it until 2 days before Boston. If we are to believe what he messaged me, that's a big problem. That just shows that there's not trust in this relationship, and there has to be that trust. There has to be that open conversation. If I'm coaching my athlete, I need to know that I can trust you to do this workout, that I can trust you to tell me how you're feeling. If there's anything banged up, we need to get on that now. This is probably something that if Sarah Crouch told Steve Magness about initially, that they could have dealt with earlier, and she still could have run a little more healthy and not risked a stress fracture, because stress reactions happen over time. So it's a long, dull overuse injury. So if she's been feeling this for weeks, if she would have just taken some time initially, then we wouldn't have to worry about it. That's why, as a coach, athletes can't always have their decisions in their own hands. Oh, okay. You know what? One second. Okay. This is a book, Once a Runner by John L. Parker. It's kind of a seminal text for every up-and-coming runner to read. Up-and-coming pro runner, people who take way too much pride in the sport. And there's a critical workout in the book where Quentin Cassidy, the main character, is told by his coach to go run 2400s at mile pace. So he goes, he runs 2400s. His coach tells him, okay, that was great, do another rep. Goes out, does 20 by 400s. Coach tells him, okay, one more rep. He goes out, grits through it, has a lot of pain, finishes the workout. to the point where he can't walk back to his cabin. He has to be carried by his coach. He throws him on the bed. And then he gets up, go to the bathroom, he's peeing blood. All this fun stuff that we as runners romanticize. So working hard, buckling down, living in a cabin by the woods, and training for the Olympics. And I think that's where a lot of this problem comes in, is that we romanticize gutsy efforts as opposed to smart efforts. What's a smart effort? What's being conservative in training when you can go run 60 by 400 and tell everybody about the workout you just run? The thing is that running is beautiful because times speak for themselves. And if you're going to be out there running 7-10 minute miles at the end of a Boston Marathon that you're trying to hit Olympic qualifier in, just because you can tell the story of running a marathon on a broken femur does not make it worth it. And it's about time that we realize that. Okay, that's off my chest. What would you guys do in this situation? Are you Team Crouch? Are you on Sarah's side? Do you understand her motivations? Or if you're Steve Magness, what do you tell your athlete? As an athlete, have you ever ran through something ridiculously painful and lived to regret it? That's where I want to end it. And I thank you guys for watching. I appreciate you so much. There will be a podcast tonight. I didn't want to talk about this on the podcast because I know I'd get too fiery and rambly. So I wanted to keep it to the video where I can edit it down. Nice, short, sweet, succinct, and to the point. But I will be recapping Boston, and I might even have a special guest on there. You'll find out. Anyway, work hard, be nice, happy running. We'll talk soon.